Welcome, geeks, to another exciting episode of Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm really glad you're here because we have a really special show today. We're doing a panel show. I've only done a few since I've been doing this show for almost 4 years, and I'm really excited to do this panel show because I assembled other people for the panel that are veterans of conferences, and we're going to be speaking about, we're going to be discussing the importance of going to in-person conferences, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that. But, I've invited Carl, Christian, Portima, and Rocky here to talk to you all today. I'll bring them on in a little bit, and I'm really excited. So if you have any questions of these really, really smart people about attending conferences and things like that, please start putting them in the comments now so we can get them and try to get them answered for you. But this show, of course, I say a lot, most of the time is this show is for you. So ask questions, and I can't wait. I've been looking forward to this show for months now since I came up with the idea. So speaking of coming up with the idea, oh, and also this is the 99th show. So next month will be my 100th show. I'm really excited. I'll talk about that at the end of this episode. So, this actually came about because I had such a great time, going to two conferences, one in Copenhagen and one in Lithuania last year. And I had such a great time, now that COVID is pretty much over, and reconnecting with not only people I know for a long time, but I've also met a lot of new people attending conferences last year, especially at Lithuania. I met a lot of new speakers that, we still talk almost daily ever since then, which I think is great. And so, this show is based off a couple things. One is this Twitter poll that I did. I was asking developers, why aren't you going to conferences? And, unfortunately, the majority here is the company won't let them. Either, they won't fund them to travel because that's, a big cost, including the conference ticket, but they won't give them time off either. And so I think that's a shame. And also, 30% don't see a need to go to conferences, which I'm really sad about that number because, for me, I'll talk about in a second, conferences have just really supercharged my career. And I kind of want to get that out in this show and give people not only ideas, but encouragements, and also tips on how to get their companies, let their companies to go, let them go. And speaking of that real quick is, in the past, when I've joined companies, I had them write into my employment contract that they must send me to 2 conferences a year. And I don't do that anymore as a contractor, but, when I was a permanent employee, I do, because that's how important I think going to in-person conferences are. So, I can talk about, well, actually what I feel about all of this, I wrote in this article called Beyond the Screen, the Power and Perks of In-Person Tech Conferences. So you can go read that because I don't want to monopolize this episode. I want to make sure our guests talk most of the time and also answer your questions. But, I first met Carl, I think who's on the show today, at the very first conference I attended way, way, way back. I don't want to say what year because I don't want Carl to get upset at me, but it was a long time ago. And that's when that's where I met Carl for the first time. I met Rocky for the first time at the same conference, maybe not the same year, but the same conference itself. And then last year I met Portima at 2 conferences. She was at Copenhagen and Lithuania. And so that's where I got to, get to know her and get to like her. And I've even attended her session in Lithuania. And so, for me, in-person conferences and the networking that comes along with in-person conferences is golden, and it's something you can't get in virtual conferences. And going in person, just the networking alone is worth it, right? Forget the sessions, because these days most sessions are recorded. You can watch them later, but the networking you have to do, while you're there, and that's really, really has always been important to me. And quite frankly, many of the jobs I've had in the past have come from meeting people at conferences. And so it's helped my career. Not only has it helped the projects I've worked on by going to conferences and learning new techniques and things like that, but it's dramatically helped my career, not only attending conferences, but then turning around and speaking at conferences. And so, it's in-person conferences are really, really important, I think, and especially for me. Many of the people that are I consider friends in this world have most all come from conferences or running my user group here locally in San Diego. I go to conferences not only to learn, but to get inspired, to have fun. That's one thing. We sit behind a computer desk all day, and so we kind of need an outlet, and the conferences, provide that. Like last year in Copenhagen, Carl, was entertaining the geeks, and we had music and fun and games, and I want that to be brought back into conferences again, yeah, I think I talked about all the notes I had, at least, about why I love going to conferences. But I kind of want to shut up and get to the guests and let them tell you why they attend conferences. So again, make sure you start typing in your questions now, and so we can get those questions answered, especially if you need ideas on how to get your company to let you go to a conference. That's something we can help you with. And also, a month or so ago, I did a kind of a follow-up to my first article, and that's about the importance of engaging with the speakers at conferences. It's something when I was in Lithuania I didn't see happening a lot, and I want to make sure I encourage people that when you're at a conference, it's super important for you to engage with the speakers. Not only let them know if you like their session and you learn from it, and maybe you can ask follow-up questions. But if you think about any conference, there's hundreds and hundreds of person years of experience at conferences, just the speakers. And so it's your time to take advantage of that. So it's super important for you to make sure you do take advantage of that, and engage with the speakers and ask them anything you want. And most of the speakers I know will be happy to ask you anything. So, answer any of your questions. And so, anyway, all right. I want to introduce a panel one by one. I want them to do a brief introduction of themselves, and I also want each one to say, why they think that in-person conferences are important to attend. And so let's do Carl first.
Sorry, I was just attending a Meta conference. How you doing?
Well, in the future, that's where all our conferences will be done is like virtual, right?
Don't say that, man.
I know.
Hi, how are you? I'm Carl Franklin. I've been around for a long, long time. I believe that year was 1992, Dave.
Yep, right around there. Yeah.
VBIT, San Francisco.
Yeah.
I think it's great for me to attend conferences. I work for myself, and most of the time when I attend a conference, I'm speaking. Mm-hmm. And so that's really good for me. But I have my own ideas as to why bosses aren't letting people go to conferences, but I'll save that until we get around to it.
Gosh, I forgot what I was going to ask you about conferences. Anyway, it'll come back to me. All right.
Yeah, we got an hour or so.
Yeah. And yeah, Carl and I first met at VBITS, and Carl and I used to entertain the attendees and friends the night before every conference at VBITS at the top of the we would pack the top of the Marriott bar in downtown San Francisco, and bring our guitars and entertain everybody and have such a great time. It was so much
Yep.
fun.
That was fun.
Yeah. All right. My next panelist is Christian Buckley. Christian,
Hello.
hey.
Another Bay Area person here, but no longer there, but born and raised.
Yeah.
But yeah, hello. My name is Christian Buckley. I am so another independent consultant of a company called Collab Talk. I work with mostly ISVs, independent software vendors within the Microsoft ecosystem. So I've worked with a number of ISVs. I'm a 12-time MVP. Started in SharePoint. Now it's just kind of altering all things N365 as well as an RD. For those that know what that is. And I like all of you. Like I started, I didn't join the Microsoft ecosystem until 2005 officially. Prior to that, I had worked, if those that remember, Rational Software, the Catapult spinoff, then Bracket Together. I sold my company to Rational. I had a software company that I started in the late 90s and sold to Rational, and then worked with IBM for a while. So I started speaking at conferences, got involved with like Global Grid Forum. Something, if anybody knows this space, it bores me just thinking about it, but NACHA, North American Clearinghouse Association, over the financial services world, going to those kinds of conferences. But I would say for me, career-wise in the Microsoft ecosystem, I left Microsoft in 2009. I went to what was the SharePoint conference in the fall of 2009. I made friends and contacts at that event that I still talk to weekly, that are part of my core support system as an independent, working with them, doing all these other projects online and offline. So yeah, I have a lot to say about the value, the importance of conferences. I have you guys everybody here may agree with me. I'll save my comments on what's important at conferences.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dave, what you're saying about reaching out to speakers, I think that's a big mistake most people make. Is they feeling too shy? Like, oh, I really like this talk, but then they don't do anything about it.
Yeah,
it's a huge mistake.
Yes, huge mistake. Oh, and Carl, I remember what I wanted to say about you, but you also help organize conferences too, right?
No, you're thinking of Richard Campbell. He organizes Dev Intersect, Dev Connect. Dev
I thought you did too.
No, I'm not part of that. I just show up and talk.
But you do, Kristen, right?
Yeah. So I helped organize about a dozen of the SharePoint Saturday in the Western US, those events for years. We actually are doing our 10th event in Utah. I'm one of the organizers for that. I'm on the board for the local user group as well. That's happening April 19th. So yeah, very active in helping support and help others that have never run an event to understand what are the core pieces to that. It's a lot of work, but it's not as complex as people think. Yeah. It just takes work.
It's a lot of work, depending how large it is, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's bring on Purnima.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening to.
How you doing?
Good. How are you, Dave?
Good. And you want to introduce yourself a little bit and say why in-person conferences are important?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Purnima Nair. I am based in UK, but I am talking to you from Redmond at the moment because this week I was attending a conference, which is the Microsoft MVP Summit. It was my first summit, but I have attended many other conferences, which is where I met you, Dave, last year, twice, as you said.
Twice.
So my conference days goes back to 2014, I think. So I'm from India, moved to UK after my marriage, and I've always been a .NET developer all my life in my career. And in 2014, I had to take a year of maternity break. And the first thing I did after I got back from my maternity break was go attend a conference. So that was about Umbraco, which is a .NET-based open source CMS. And ever since then, I have been attending conferences. And of late, I'm quite a busy speaker as well. So the two has kind of amalgamated in a nice way, which means I get the best of both worlds. I get to speak, I get to see places, I get to speak to attendees as a speaker, and I get to watch talks by other speakers as well, go have a conversation with them. And I agree to what Carl and Christian said. If you are at a conference, go speak to the speaker. Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I personally love to hear from the attendees in my talk,
Me
even
too.
if it is like, hey, this is a great talk. What goes into it? I wanted to learn about it. Go have that conversation. Equally, if you're a speaker yourself, go see others' talks. Have a chat with them. It's great. Uh, it has helped me in various different ways, I can tell you. But we can speak more about that later. But I am looking forward to my conference runs this summer, starting May.
Yeah, that I'm speaking in London in May. I'm really in my first time. I'm so excited about being able to go there for the first time.
Oh, the SDD conference,
Yes,
Yes,
the SDD.
yes.
Are you speaking there too?
No, I think it kind of clashes with Tekorama B in Belgium. I might not be right there, but yes, that's a big conference.
and I invited her on, everybody, because I wanted, because four of us are from America, and I wanted to make sure we had somebody not from America to kind of speak about their experiences, because for me, I've learned that conferences in other countries are vastly different than the ones here, and the experience is different. And so I kind of wanted to have people that have not only attended but have spoken at these different conferences in the UK and things like that. So all right, and last but not least is my good friend Rocky. Rocky, welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Dave. Glad to be here.
And want to introduce yourself and why you think conferences are important?
Yeah. Oh, and I'm wearing a rock shirt because I figured we're rocking the code world. So one of my favorite bands. But yeah, so I'm Rocky Latka. I am the VP of strategy at a company called Zebia. We're a global consulting company that does cool stuff. And but you all mentioned VBits, and so I'm also co-chair for VS Live, which VBits rebranded a long time ago and became VS Live.
Right.
And then I'm the chair for Cloud and Containers Live. So I'm like a couple folks here. I'm involved in organizing some conferences, but then I've over the years spoken at conferences very, very large and very small and local and international, and like you said, there's quite a variation in the different events that are available to us all, and I think all of them bring a great deal of value. The value might vary,
right?
And a lot of the conversation, thus far, I think, has been focused on the value to individual people. That 30% that said they didn't see the reason. And which I agree with everything everybody has said. But I also think that, that 45% where their company won't pay for it, there's definitely some strategies that people can employ when talking about conferences. And I hope throughout this episode that we touch on some of the value, because it's not just strategies and manipulating your employer, but there's real value that employers can get by sending folks to these events. So I look forward to the conversation.
Before we go any further, Dave, I want to point out I really like your green screen backdrop there. And I also wanted to call attention to my green screen backdrop because this is a rock thing. I pulled up a picture of a studio, but it's interactive. Check it out.
Oh, it's interactive green screen. Oh, he's joking.
What a great way to play! What a great way to play in needing the coffee. Yeah.
Oh, it's so great. You can just look, and even the coffee looks real. It's got steam coming off it and everything. It's pretty cool tech.
Yeah,
but
I want my next house to look like a recording studio. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Sleep in the sound booth, right?
I said in my introduction that I have what I think are the reasons for the number one answer, which is bosses won't pay for it. And I think it comes down to incentives. And if you think back to when we used to go to conferences, there was no internet.
Right.
There was no ChatGPT. There was no Pluralsight or anything like that. There was barely any video online, if there was any video online, and podcasts hadn't even been invented yet. So I think that going to conferences was really good for employers to send their people to conferences, because not only are they learning about what's current today, but also what's coming in the future. And that was really valuable to the employers. And now I think it's harder for employers to find an incentive to send somebody, because of all of the ways that they can get information. And the value, I think the biggest value, is to the attendee. But the employer that's not their incentive, right? Their incentive is, how can I, unless they want to take a vacation or something like that, how can I, get the most out of my employee? So I think it's a problem that is just built into reality here today. Is you're barking up against you're blowing against the wind when you talk to your boss about going to a conference. And unless you're speaking. Now, Rocky has made a career out of speaking and writing and all this stuff. And the company that he worked for before, that he worked for many years, was great. They just said, okay, we're all in with you and your online persona and your book persona and your speaking persona. We think that we're going to get some consulting work out of that. And I'm sure they did. And it worked out for them. So speaking at a conference, I think, is a big incentive for a company. It can be.
Yes.
But the other incentive, for the other reason that I think people should send you to a conference, is if you attend a workshop.
Yes.
If you attend a workshop, or there's new content that you can't get anywhere else, but having one-on-one with an instructor and asking questions and actually doing the thing and sitting down and doing it is definitely worth the price of the workshop, even if it's $500 or $600.
Oh, you're right. I did a workshop in Lithuania, and I know the guy that one of the guys that was there. He had specific issues he was trying to solve for his company in Denmark, and we were able to really drill down on his issues, because in a conference talk, we can't talk about anybody's specific issues, right? It's too narrow for the entire audience. And so the workshops do allow you to do that. And I'll be doing an extended version of that workshop in London. And I really enjoy, workshops are tough to do, but tough to teach. But I think the people that go get a lot of value out of it.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
See, I've got a slightly different perspective. So I'm on the channel side. I'm on the business development. I work with salespeople, the executive, the business decision maker side of most organizations. And I go to a lot of conferences where I don't attend a single session.
Oh, me too.
And a lot of that is because, and this is going back to those employers that are saying, well, look, you can go on YouTube and see videos on this topic. You can get that kind of training there. The greater value that I see is in the expo hall, meeting the vendors of those solutions, meeting the product and engineering, the marketing teams, and asking them questions. The one thing I would say is, because I do attend sessions, and there are topics, there are new announcements. I get more though out of, because we're as individuals, you're not able to consume all that information that you want to consume. It's just impossible to keep up on all those things. I learned so much by the questions that peers, that other attendees are asking. And there was that's a fan. I didn't even think of that. Again, all this week was at the MVP Summit in Redmond. And I was doing a roundtable at the very last session from 11:12 noon yesterday, Friday, and sitting next to a good friend of mine who's up from Melbourne, Australia, asked a question. I was like, great question. Of course, I didn't tell him that because his head would have swollen up. But Lorian, love Lorian, but his attitude would have changed there, right there. But just fantastic question. I was like, wow, which caused me to go send an email to a company that I'm working with, and said, hey, to an MVP that wasn't at the event. I said, something that we need to look into. So again, it's this word serendipitous activities that happen. You'll never have them if you're not attending those events.
Right. And again, I think that's good for you, the attendee. I think that the employer may have a different. And here's the other thing: depending on how secure or insecure the employer is about you networking,
right,
and finding and networking yourself out of your job, if they think you're one of those people who, if you keep them unexposed to job opportunities, then they will stay loyal to you.
Oh, yes.
But
that's true.
That is a
turnover
huge
is a big problem.
Yeah.
But Carl, and I agree totally. I've worked with that sort of org, but early in my career, back in the VBits days, I worked in a brick and mortar company. I was not a consultant at that point. And the value my employer got out of me going to those conferences was being able to interact with speakers and with other attendees, and bringing back actionable information that either immediately applied to solve problems that we were facing, or understanding the future roadmap of the platforms and products that we were relying on, and being able to steer our company. And I was at that point early in my career, right? So I was a junior, but
you're also fiercely loyal to your company,
exactly.
and trustworthy, and your boss knew that about you and wanted to help you build your brand.
And so I think that the first part of what I just said is a little bit problematic today because there's so much information on the internet and just available. But I would argue that the value, and David, you brought this up very early on, the interaction with speakers and with other attendees, that you can't get on the internet.
It's true.
There were times, or have been over the years, when I have had conversations with people that I was facing a show-stopping problem, and I'm like, how do you do this? How do you do this? And I would talk to, and I'd find a speaker who would go, oh, well, have you thought about this? And I'm like, oh, and then all of a sudden, that by itself totally paid for the conference.
Having lunch with Steve Sanderson at NDC is just something you can't buy.
Yeah. And I mean, for my employer, right? That's the thing. I mean, it was obviously it was fantastic for me too.
Yeah.
But it, if you're able to unblock this thing that's stopping your team from moving forward, how much would you pay in consulting fees to have somebody come in, right? It'd be thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yes.
And so, the company spent, $3,000-$4,000 to send me to a conference, but I came back with that, particular solution, and it's a tactical benefit.
Do you think your story, Rocky, could happen today in 2024?
I think it happened this week because I also was at the
Not you.
Summit.
I'm saying somebody else.
Oh no, but just this week, and I was wrestling with a show-stopping problem, and it wasn't even one of the Microsoft people. It was another attendee.
Okay.
That I was kind of whinging, complaining a little bit to one of the product group folks about how hard something was, and somebody else, a friend in the audience, came over and was like, so have you thought about this? And like five minutes later, the problem had been solved. And so
I think I know what this is, and you and I have to talk after this show.
Yes.
But you're all right, and I wrote about this in the second article, I think, and you're right. I have solved problems by going to conferences and talking to people, But even, like one of the things I do at conferences is I try to make sure that I eat lunch or breakfast or whatever at a table of people I don't know.
Right.
Right.
Definitely.
And I still remember one time when I was working at a company and we were trying to figure out how we're going to move one huge database to another database system, right? And what all that involves, the whole process. And I didn't even ask anybody. I was just sitting at a table and there was a guy from State Farm that just went through this issue.
Wow.
Right. And I just listened to him. Right. I didn't even ask him questions. I just listened and I got ideas on how I could, bring back to the company to make that.
Say, would you like some more iced tea, sir?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that, and this is, I'm sorry. I just want to add one more thing.
Yeah.
The magic words are, hey, nice to meet you. What are you working on?
Yeah. Yeah.
That opens
exactly.
the floodgates. I'm sorry, Purnima. Go ahead.
That's fine, Carl. So my take on the Twitter poll that you first showcased, Dave, it's actually sad as well as shocking for me to know that, because if you look at all the tech giants out there, they all have a community kind of a big outreach program. And conferences are the place where communities come together and you get to meet people. Like Carl said, a lunch with Steve Sanderson, you can't
Yeah.
get that experience online. And while I'm at conferences, I speak, I attend other sessions, but there's something I really look forward to, which is hallway tracks. You just meet people, you converse with them, you gain knowledge of who I can potentially speak to if I'm stuck. And I still remember the conversation I think we had at NDC Copenhagen. It was a rainy evening. Rain was battering down, but we were sitting outside in the tent, having all kinds of conversation, right from tech to travel to music to food. I think that stays, and that kind of builds a rapport with other people as well. And personally speaking, like a personal trait I've gained over the years attending the conferences, I used to be a shy introvert self. I used to run away from people, and
Me too.
there's a cultural barrier as well that comes along with it. Attending conferences actually has helped me a lot, not just while meeting and greeting people. I can take that back and work on that. Even, in my workplace, that's something that has helped me. Like 10 years ago, attending this podcast would have terrified me. Like, I'm being honest. Right now, I'm talking to you all. So that's a personal thing that I've gained by attending the conference. And some of my closest friends that life has given me has been from attending conferences, just through chatting to people. They might not be even doing what I'm doing, but I have good friendships around the world. That's something that's been given to me because of attending conferences. And again, when you have work problems, you know what the keyword that you want to look out for. What is the key people? Who are the key people that you can reach out to help? And absolutely, it has helped me many, many, many times. So I think it's a good thing to do. It's where people come, people chat, and I think yes, sticking for lunch. If you're in a breakfast, go speak to people. Don't just sit alone and have your food. And of course, I don't go in late in the evenings, but I make it a point to stay around at conferences for a good couple of hours after the conference has been done with as well, because that opens up conversations. I think the real value of conference lies in those hallway tracks.
Agreed.
Of course, sessions are important. You can gain a lot of keywords. Like even when I speak, it's keywords I give out to others. You can build that upon it. When I attend sessions, I'm looking for keywords. What more can I know about topics that I'm interested in? It was previously, I want to know more about what I already know, but now it is like, this abstract looks interesting. Let me just go see what it is. Maybe there's something useful. And still there is an aspect of what more can I learn? There's also a big aspect of validating what I already know, communicating and chatting to others. So I can't say it is definitely an enriching and enlightening experience. And of course, you go back home with full of ideas in your head and really a brain waiting to explode and explode with ideas and inspiration.
The .NET Rocks podcast was a direct result of me having conversations at conferences. In my case, it was with speakers, but also with attendees, and just that hallway experience of just having regular conversations, and for some reason it worked. I don't know.
Yeah. And the one thing that no one's brought up yet, and I'll just bring up real quick, and that is, one of the other aspects of why companies don't let their employees go. I mean, Carl hit on one, it's especially because some companies are afraid for their people to learn, right? But, the other thing is, I've seen in the industry, which was really different when I started, but I've seen in the industry that the companies are just shrinking their training budget to either almost nothing or nothing, right? And I'm talking about big companies like Verizon are doing the same thing, right? And so these companies are trying to save money by not providing this aspect to their engineers, but they're actually losing money to me, if in that case, right?
So the question is, how do we fix this? Like,
right?
How do we give employers more incentive to send people to conferences, whether it's at the company itself or at the conference?
Right.
Can the conference do anything to make it easier?
Yeah.
And more incentivize the employer.
Rocky, you had some ideas, I think, right, about ideas on what to talk to your employer about.
Yeah, I think there's at least two angles, and we've touched on them. One being the sending somebody and having that person go with the intent of finding solutions to problems by talking to other folks. And Purnima just eloquently covered the other big one that I think is you send somebody not to solve a tactical problem, but because they will come back full of ideas. And for a company, to have somebody in their IT group or their development team or whatever, full of enthusiasm, full of ideas, and like, I think we could transform what we're doing. Purnima really hit that on the head there.
That can also be a bad thing for employers. We don't want them thinking too different.
Many ideas.
Yeah. No, stay in your lane and do your work.
It's not just we all have the specific problems we're trying to work through. I mean, one of the benefits of going and building a network, and this is one thing again that organizations need to understand. You want to have employees who are well connected. You could come at me with any question in the Microsoft ecosystem. I'm going to know a very small number of answers to that, but I know somebody. Yes. I definitely know somebody who knows the answer.
Right.
And I can help find that. That is so much of the value of those new connections is building out your digital Rolodex of contacts for when you have those questions that you can't answer. Right. When you can't find the documentation. We've all done that. I mean, that goes back when I started at the phone company in the early 90s. Those remember Pacific Bell. My first job, I was taking over from a guy who was retiring. I got handed this massive 3-ring binder, and he said he claimed to have documented everything in his job that I was taking over. And I'd go and ask a question, and he'd be like, "It's in the binder," and he wouldn't answer me. He's like, so I've spent hours digging through the binder, trying to find it. Finally, he comes over, flips it over to some workflow that I would have never got my answer from what he said out of that. I said, like, this is not a good system. Hoarding of information, poorly documented, process things around that. I get much more value out of the conversation, talk to somebody, finding the experts, bringing them in as needed to problem solve. That's what I get out of those conversations. That's why, again, I say the expo hall is the greatest thing in the world for these events, because I want to know what every vendor does. That's always my goal. Like, I know, like, the things we'd like to talk about, like my agenda, I going to MVP Summit this week. I had all the sessions I wanted to go to. I went to about a third of those, because along the way, hallway conversations, found out about something that was unofficial, not on the schedule. I pulled those things together as needed, but I had a plan going in for that. When I go to a huge conference, it's exactly the same. I have a plan in place, whether I'm speaking or not. But part of that is every vendor, if I don't know who they are, go find out who they are. I don't want to miss some new invention, idea, concept, team, something that's out there that's innovating in a new way, and then put it into, have that piece in my chessboard.
Christian, do you own your own consultancy?
I do. I have so I'm independent, and like I said, I work with ISVs.
And I think your answer is indicative of someone who owns their own consultancy. And I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Yeah. Everybody's different, and somebody who works 9 to 5 as a Mort developer, doesn't have that with the thing that you have, right?
So I would say that. So having been a W-2 at a number of these companies since I left Microsoft and worked with ISVs, I went through multiple acquisitions with one. I was the chief evangelist so like my job was to go and network. But I'm grateful that those companies understood this piece. They understood the value of having not just me. There were other people. I had the title, but that were connected. My job was to be that, so they would reach out to me constantly, sales, product, and be like, Christian, do you know anything about this? No. Do you know somebody? Let me go find someone. Right. And having that as a resource, and it's because I was at those events.
Yeah,
right. And
sorry, Dave, but as a manager, in a non-consulting setting, one of the things that both I had managers and was a manager, that people that go to conferences, we would require when they came back to do like brown bag lunches and share what they learned. And
my employers did that to me. Some of them.
Yep. Yeah. Some of them, the good ones. Right. And, but I mean, that's a really important way to leverage that expense that the company put into sending you there, is to, you're coming back, and not only are you better, but you're going to help make your colleagues better.
Yeah.
But some of the things Christian just said too are true, in that you can't brown bag lunch your contacts, and Purnima talked about the friendships. I think several of us have that we've made. You can't brown bag those, but if the company can keep you, which is maybe a risk, like Carl said, but if the company can keep you,
they
those
trust
contacts continue to be valuable over time, and
right.
That's valuable for you as an employee, because it's good for your career, and it's good for your employer, right? So if I think about this, that I've sent people over the years that were relatively junior, but they showed promise, right? It's not random people that you send to a conference, right? You're like, oh,
you have to.
So and so shows some promise, like Carl said, seems probably loyal. Let's send them to a conference. It's an investment in that person, and my hope and is that they'll over years grow into a super valuable person in this organization.
Right.
Yeah,
there's a certain visibility. There's a certain visibility that you gain and the employer gains through being at conferences. That's something, as much vocal you are on the social media, you can't really gain. No. So I think as much as there's the angle of the person is networking and seeing it as probably, this might be a strong word to use for an employer, but insecurity around that. There's also that angle of the person is going to a conference, my employee is going to a conference. There's a certain visibility that the employer gains through it. And it is also a positive reflection on the employer, saying that, okay, this employer sends out employees to conferences. So there's a good opportunity for someone to learn at such an organization. That would be my understanding of it. Do I want to be a part of such a team? Yes, absolutely. So that was the kind of shocking aspect that Twitter poll gave me. Why? I think there is absolutely no angle of lack of trust or insecurity that should be there. It is quite the opposite. You know, if all the tech giants are having communities, there's a big outreach program. You want to be a part of it because it's a reflection on you as an employer. As I said, it is a reflection on the opportunities to learn. It can actually do good things to you more than losing people. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Absolutely, cost is a matter, but I think there are ways to get around it. If you actually look at what it brings back, I think it completely outweighs. And as
yeah.
Rockford said, brown bag lunches and attendees sharing with the team what they have seen and listened to at conferences. I've been a part of such meetings in the past, which is fantastic because it even that can lead me to think away in a different angle. And probably this person is someone who I should follow. Probably they might have answers for me. So there's lots of value that you gain. And if I see that an employer is taking it a different sense, I think there's a big avenue of misunderstanding or miscommunication there. It is an investment on your employees. It's an investment on yourself. It's a way to self grow without doing too much effort. Send employees to conferences. They bring back value to you.
Yeah, yeah. I think most people will do that. I mean, a vast majority will bring back something that will improve the products the employer are doing, right? Yeah, and I wanted to say to everybody that's watching is that most of us, if not all of us here, have ties in to these companies like Microsoft, like Carl and I and Rocky. We all have ties into Microsoft. So if we personally have a problem, we actually, because of our networking and because of the ties we've got in other ways, I can send an email to Scott Guthrie and get an answer, right? But not everybody has that opportunity. So before I was a Microsoft MVP, my way to get those answers was to go to a conference and ask them, right? And that was my way because I didn't have the ties that I do now.
I got to bring up. Ask me about Code in a Castle before we quit, because I got a great story, but I don't want to interrupt the flow. What's going on? So go ahead, Rocky.
Well, I was going to say, David, I don't know if you also wanted to talk about. I mean, we're talking about like the major conferences, the big ones, which could be anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 just for the ticket. Then of course travel and hotel and kind of all that and time away. But there's a lot of lower level regional events, community-based events, which a lot of which are low cost or free. And like I'm talking about, I'm putting on our 10th event here in Utah on April 19th, which was formerly known as the SharePoint Saturday. I'm going to SQL Saturday in 2 weeks. We've got our basically our M365 event 2 weeks later. At the same location. So a lot going on locally. But that's something that, again, to go out to, if you're not familiar with communitydays.org, which is the Microsoft sponsored, there's collabdays.org. There's through your user groups and those communities. I know I'm on the collaboration side, so that's the world that I see, but there are so many that are out there. Many of which are free. And so to attend those, or if there's nothing going on in your region, to become an organizer. And there are groups of people that will help you to figure that out and make that happen. But that's another, again, attending that kind of stuff for your personal benefit, for the company benefit. There's just a ton of value there. And on a smaller scale, everything we've talked about, the friendships that you'll make, what you'll learn, the connections you'll make that'll help you in your job are all there on that local level.
Yeah, and you're totally right. And Carl, didn't you have some kind of hand in creating Code Camp?
I may have done one of the first ones in Boston.
You did one of the first ones, and so Code, and I will say I've written
Tom
about
Robinson
this and talked about this. Yeah, and I've talked about this a lot. Is that pretty much all of my favorite conferences are code or community conferences, right? Because they're run by people just like you and me, and the talks are usually, you know, much different than at a professional conference. You know, the speakers might not be as polished, but that's okay. But, you know,
a lot of times it's the same speakers that are doing
Yeah.
each of those, and they'll have
Yeah.
sometimes the same or slight a variation of that. But what I find at the local ones, they're much more interactive. So, like I know when I present at a collab days or a community day event, I'll have, again, my slides, I'll have whatever I'm demoing, whatever I'm talking about. If the audience, the questions are going a different direction, it could shift that towards where the audience is going. I mean, that's part of the benefit.
Yeah. I used to.
Rocky's been trying to say something for 10
I'm sorry,
minutes.
Rocky. Go.
Oh no, it's all right. It was just the flow has gone somewhere else, but
Yeah.
I think, you know, we focused a lot on talking about individuals, and it occurred to me as we were talking about this, and it was something Christian just said about groups, but at VS Live, I go sit and have lunch with folks, and and that's something I choose to do, and frequently I'll end up sitting at a table that is like 4 or 5, 6 people from one organization, and it's because the organization didn't send one individual. They're it was a strategic thing. They're like, oh, we're trying to get into modern .NET. We're still on .NET framework, or we're trying to go into Azure, or whatever it is, and they're considering or are actively engaged in doing some pretty big thing, and so they send a bunch of people, and that's a different strategy that organizations employ. And something, for you is, to consider when you're talking to your boss and say, hey, maybe you shouldn't just send me, you should send, several of us, because we're about to enter this, pretty high risk, high value, hopefully high reward, process. But the one comment that I would make, and is that I think those people that are sitting at a table, it's like, oh, let's all meet up for lunch because we all work together. That's actually a mistake.
Yes, it is a mistake.
It would be better were all of those people to scatter to the different tables and learn from other attendees and other companies, what they're doing.
Right. Well, actually, that reminds. I knew you were going there, and it reminded me of when I was in Philadelphia doing a workshop at the Code Camp in Philadelphia. And before lunch, I told everybody in my workshop, I said, go upstairs, find a table of people you don't know, and start talking to them, right? So I had to put my computer away. So I was the last one going upstairs, and guess what they were all doing? They were talking to each other. And I go, and after lunch, I go, you guys did exactly what I told you not to do. Right. Yeah. That's not the way you get the value out of a conference, is by talking to each other. You need to talk to people you don't know. Right?
I went to a dinner with about 20, 25 security MVPs, and I learned a couple things. One, I don't care about Intune at all. It's incredibly boring.
Number 2, never get your filet mignon medium.
No, but had several conversations which are going to lead to other calls. Was able to answer questions about collaboration, about SharePoint and Teams and other things for them that they were stymied by, and maybe it'll lead to some project work. But just people that again, it's great to get different perspectives and to understand, like, what are the problem areas that are impacting, their work. It's that's, again, while I'm sitting in, like I said earlier, sitting in the session, the last one of the week, and one of the last comments made at the end of that session gave me a completely new perspective. I hadn't thought about that, and it's going to lead to blog posts and other questions, and then back to one of the companies, the ISVs I'm working with, potentially some product features.
Yeah.
Very cool.
You're right. And I also want to make sure, we have touched about this so far on the episode, but I want to make sure there we also address the engineer apathy about even going, right?
Right.
There's, if, as far as my poll, 30% of engineers don't even see a value in going. So there's more than just the company not letting them, right? It's also the engineers. I would assume more of the younger engineers don't even see the value in going. And I know we've touched upon a lot of things here, but I wanted to make sure if anybody else has something to say about that specifically to bring it up.
If somebody doesn't want to go, what are you going to do? I mean,
well, they don't see the value. I'm not saying they don't want to go, but they don't see that they haven't been, so they don't see the value of going, right?
Just try it.
Just try it, right?
You like it.
Well, there's something to be said. There are some people that are very passionate about it. And hopefully if you're in engineering, you're continually learning. You're trying to continue learning. And look, there are some people which prefer, like I was very much the way my learning style is leave me alone. Let me go read and watch videos and that kind of stuff. But the next stage of that is the interactive, is hearing, is like those kinds of things. I think we all humans need to have the different styles, different inputs, different outputs. We don't all learn like one way.
Right.
And so I think it benefits us. It stretches us by going to have those conversations.
Oh, yeah.
But then it's like I said, it's like you're building connections. I don't know. I'm not going in with any questions. I come out with more questions that I could take back to my individual learning.
Well, I've even gone to conferences sometimes, and I've had a list before I even went, right? I had a list on a piece of paper of the things I wanted to talk about with people to help, to help whatever I'm working on at work, right? And I compile that list. And sometimes, because I do get to go to conferences and I do get companies to write it into the employment contract, is I'll go around to the other engineers and I'll say, hey, so what are some of your pain points? And I'll write them down, and maybe if I can, find them out while I'm at the conference, I'll bring that back and tell everybody about it, right?
Can I tell my story now? This is
tell your story.
It has to do with going and for training, conferences, workshops, whatever. So it's basically that I did a week-long training session in a castle in Tuscany that I called a traincation. It was like 10 grand for a couple for the week. And it was at codeinacastle.com. A friend of mine set it all up. He said, I think this is a great idea. You want people that are either self-employed, want a vacation, but also want training, blah, blah, blah. The spouses come along. They get to go do things in the morning, 9 to 1 while we're in class. And then everybody meets up afterwards and has a really, really great time. So this worked out really, really well, not just for me as a trainer, but there was only like 7 people that attended. And that's like all they needed to break even. Right. And so, but the camaraderie and the closeness that everybody felt, not just in the classroom, but socially, their spouses and everybody, the couples got together with each other, and turned out to be profitable and really, really an experience. Now, here's the interesting thing. Almost everybody that attended was self-employed, except for one. And this one person had worked for Microsoft. He knew who I was. He was working with this other company. It was all about Blazor, so he didn't really know about Blazor. But his boss basically brought him into the office and said, you have to go to this.
Wow.
How about that? Yeah, you need to go to this. For some reason, this was something that was desirable for the boss to send this person not only on vacation, but to training at the same time.
Yeah. So
Carl, can I say one important part of that story, too, is that there's another reason for the conference is, I just thought of this too, is the immersion factor, that you're not, because the problem is if you're attending something like so I interview every Monday. I publish an interview with an MVP from something I've been doing it for years. So Monday, MVP Monday is the thing. It's called MVP Buzz Chat out on my blog, Buckley Planet. And and I tell every new MVP, I do new and old MVPs. Rocky's been on there. Dave's been on there. Yeah. That's right. Purnima, I can't remember. Did we do one? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it was a while back too. So, so Carl, come on.
But you never call, you never write.
He's not feeling the love.
But I tell every one of them, I said, for being a Microsoft MVP, the biggest perk is the summit that we just went through. And I said, you need to do everything you can to be there, if possible, to be there. But it's the same for events, because sitting at home watching sessions, it's too easy to jump over to email, to not pay attention, to become a distraction from that. And so being immersed within that, again, you're going to fill your time with those conversations and ideas and concepts that you're just not going to come across through a screen.
Yeah.
And you're not privy to the conversations that happen immediately before or after the actual session.
Yeah.
Or the very chattiness that happens during the sessions as well. But yes.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, the value, and maybe that's the thing, especially in today's world where so much of this is online, either through text or video or whatever. But the interactivity that exists when you're face to face with somebody, you're in the same room, and you can just walk up and go, "Hey, that was really, really, a great talk. I wish you would have talked a little bit more about this thing." And they're like, "Oh yeah, well, what's your concern about that thing?" And just you have that 60 second interaction at the end of the session that can be transformative for you as an individual or your career. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. I want to bring up real quick. Hold on. I want to bring up real quick. We're about at an hour, and I want to make sure people please ask questions. And Simon, if you can put something up, I want to make sure we get your questions answered. It seems like a lot of people are watching, so don't be shy. Ask questions. So, Purnima, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm talking about meeting people who have kind of come across digitally. So it happened to me at the MVP Summit. There were two people. I had watched the videos they put on YouTube and also some of their really good blog posts. So I was like, oh my God, I've read your blog post. I've seen you speak on YouTube. So it was actually a really nice feeling to put a face behind the name and speak to them in real life. So that's one of the greatest things I look forward to when I go to conferences. I have learned from you, so I get to meet you in person and have a good conversation with them. Now, there's also something that I want to add about the Engineer Apathy 2 conferences. As Carl said, give it a try. And, people have circumstances, and there might be a case where people genuinely cannot make to, conferences or travel. So I also want to speak about meetups, community-driven events.
Yeah.
In this case, meetups are a great venue to start into conferencing. If you are daunted by huge 1,000 people to 1,000 people conferences, make your way into a meetup. Find a meetup group, be a part of that, try how it goes. It's a smaller group. You have much more personable conversations there, and that can lead and build up into attending a conference. So if you want to break your stigma or whatever mental block that you have about attending a conference on a personal level, meetups are a great venue.
Since Ineta's gone, Meetup is the way that local user groups organize themselves. Meetup.com.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring up, the power of, I forget who was talking about the before and after a session and things like that. Carl is, talked to, I used to run a user group for 20 years, and Carl's been there multiple times. And, the one thing we did after every single meeting is we went up the street and had food and drinks afterwards.
Yep.
And I can tell you, I learned more from that than the actual user group meeting most of the time. Right. And I encouraged other, attendees to come on, it's 9 o'clock. It's okay. But let's go chat, because that's really where the value is to me, is these, networking things like that outside of the main session or user group meeting and things like that. They're all valuable, but the outside of that is really valuable to me.
Yeah, for what I noticed, because we have with our user group that meets monthly. Again, we're organizing this Collab Days Utah event next month, but it's just kind of funny that we have just over an hour that's organized with a speaker on a topic, and the size, the number of people varies. We've been struggling to get it back up to our pre-COVID numbers of that are attending in person. It's online as well. But then we go down, we exit the building because we're hosted by a company. We exit the building, and we're almost equal time spent standing in the parking lot afterwards, talking about the follow-up conversation. But again, because that's where we're making friendships and then getting in and talking about the specific issues of what we're experiencing and problem solving that happens there in the parking lot.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going. I need to go. But let me have this conversation. One more conversation. Well, I'm staying and having this conversation. That's the kind of thing that I get into. I just don't want to leave. I really need to sleep, but it's fine. Sleep is overrated.
Well, one day a month at least. I held my, we had our user group meeting once a month, and one day a month I can stay up a little bit late. It's okay.
And sleep is the best 10 hours of the week. Yeah, for me.
I was told, like at the summit, by the third day, you really need to consider sleeping because you are standing up and sleeping. I'm like, yeah, probably.
That's why God invented caffeine. Come on.
Yes, this is liquid sleep.
Third day was like caffeine-driven conference was a thing. Like everyone is so tired, but we just want to push through. We need to have that conversation. We are here. We just want to be here.
I want to hear from regular people who aren't consultants, who don't own their own companies, who work for the man, who write code every day, and tell us what your experience has been, either asking to go to conferences or going to conferences, or why you think that your boss lets you go or makes you go or whatever. Let's hear from the regular schmoes out there.
Yeah. I want to hear from people. And while people are typing that, I also want to bring up, I kind of mentioned this earlier on, but I wanted to make sure I say it before the show ends, if you're interviewing at a company, one of the important things you should be asking is their continuing education, including conferences, right? And so do they pay for you to go to local college, courses? Do they pay for you to go to conferences? These are
maybe they'd want to sponsor an event.
Yeah. And these are super important things to ask, while you're interviewing, because that, not only because that's good for you, but it tells you a lot about the company, right? That they have a vested interest in you learning if they provide these things, right?
Another thing I can add is if an employer is not sure about attending conferences or sending people to conferences, why not open up the venue for one evening in a month to host a meetup?
That's it.
Because that can, of course, give you the visibility, but you can also see what really happens at a conference at a smaller scale. Yeah. It's good conversations, And
if the company sponsors it, then it's better for the company, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's huge value in there. You can really gain a great deal. Just open up the doors to your meeting room for one evening in a month. That's not a big ask. And honestly, there are meetups who struggle because they can't find a hosting venue.
Yes.
Luckily, I'm from UK where meetups are a thing and there's regular push and people are interested, because what I see is that there are even recruitment agencies who look into opening up their buildings for getting people in, and they sponsor meetups as well. So and even the speakers are supported. Like I'm traveling to a couple of meetups in May up north in UK to speak. I'm supported. We'll find you a hotel. We'll find you the train tickets. Just come and speak for us. So it can build. It is so It is so good. So it can also break that employee stigma about, oh my God, I'm sending employees to conferences. They're just going to run away from me. You know,
Right.
I've been lucky to be a part of organizations who send me to conferences to learn rather than having that notion of, oh my God, she's going
Yeah.
to run away from us.
Turn the tables. Now
Mhm.
it's now the employer is the beneficiary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that actually reminds me of, since I've been consulting pretty much nonstop since 2012, I no longer ask to go to conferences. I tell them I'm going to a conference, right? And in all those years, not one company I was consulting with had an issue, right?
Yeah.
But I would just tell them I'm going to this one, this one, this
Well,
one. They
after
go,
a certain
okay.
age, you get tenure, you can
Yeah.
you can call your own shots. But in order
That's
to do that, you have to start slow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Doesn't look like we're going to get any questions here.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of people watching. I don't know why anybody's not asking.
Daniel
anything.
said hi. Hi, Daniel.
Yeah, Columbia, yeah,
Colorado.
Columbia's in the house. Yeah,
Yeah, you can ask
We're
a question,
just
Daniel.
We're preemptively answering all questions. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. That's
We're
where
We've
you're
already
from.
answered them all, right? Yeah.
Hey, Daniel, where are you from? Whoa. Yep.
Well, I'm just making sure I'm going over my list to make sure we brushed across all these things. Yeah, I think we've touched about everything, all the topics that I wrote down for the meeting. Is there anything else we haven't talked about you guys want to talk about real quick before we start doing the sign off and everything?
I just want to say that I may have come off as a get off my lawn kind of poo-poo guy today, but the fact is that I really, really do think going to conferences is extremely beneficial. I was just bringing up some of the reasons why I think employers are obviously not sending people as much as they used to anyway. And, trying to figure out how to make that work is always a challenge. But
Yes.
going personally for me is always, always, always beneficial. It's a great experience. Do it.
I usually have such a good time at conferences, especially the MVP summit. Is I literally get depressed when I can come back, right? Because I spend a whole week around super smart people and talking and networking, and I come home to my office.
Where'd everybody
right?
go?
Yeah, it's like a vacuum, and
Yeah.
I really miss that. And
That's why rock stars get into drugs, Dave.
I know exactly, right?
What else are you going to do out there on the road?
Right.
Well, that's a kind of a good segue into what we have not really talked about. Just very quickly, but if you're interested in getting into, speaking at, being an part of those communities and presenting of that. I mean, so much of that, what we just talked about, starts at the local level and the user groups.
That's how I got started.
Bringing it back around the music. So I have no fear of being on stage, and I've been asked many, many times over the years, like, how do you not have fear of going up in front of, and I will say, getting up in front of 20 people is a lot harder than getting up in front of 2,000 people. But that's something different. But for me, so I was the lead singer of an alternative rock band for several years. That's how I burned it out. So that's what I say to prep to be a speaker in tech. Start in rock music.
Yeah.
Right? Original music
Yep.
is harder than covers because you can't hide behind the genius of other writers. You're
That's
putting
right.
your own self out there. But that's a good way to, and then get into technology speaking. That's my.
Someday you can be like me and spend all your money supporting your 10-piece band.
There you go.
there you go.
Well,
from which I make no money, but it costs money.
But Christian, that's exactly how I got over my shyness, and I've written about this a bunch. And that is, when I founded, my user group 30 years ago this year, I forced myself to be one of those founding members because for some reason I knew I needed to learn how to speak in front of people. And at that point in my life, I did a lot of work to get out of not talking to people. right? I didn't like talking in front of people. That was like death to me. If I had to stand up, even in high school, if I had to stand up in class, I was a total wreck, right? And I say that now and people just laugh at me going, you're not like that. Oh, no, I was. I was like that.
It's funny you say that too. So I've been in tech for 33 years as of this year. And where I started was the same thing, was my second year in tech was joining Toastmasters to get past those fears.
Right.
Yep.
A lot of people.
That's a great organization.
Right. Yep. I chose founding a user group, but other people do Toastmasters and other things like that too.
Don Kiley introduced me to Toastmasters. He said that was the greatest thing for him becoming a speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although no, I have a problem now with games that have like the little buzzer thing. I think of being the ums and ahs and getting buzzed.
Yes.
I have anxiety around those buzzers now.
You need that. But that, even if you don't want to be a speaker, that help, participating and even just speaking locally will help
engaging
you
with people
at work, right?
Yeah.
It'll help you get your ideas across better at work. It'll help you feel more confident at work, right? And things like that. And so even if you don't want to go around the world speaking like, we all do, but just locally, you can really make an impact at
That's
your
where
company.
it starts.
Yeah. Well, I think that's been a great discussion. I have one question I want you all to ask. I'm going to ask here in a second. We'll have everybody answer one by one, but I think that was great. Is there anything else really quick anybody wants to bring up? No?
No, bring on the question.
Let's hear it.
And so the question is, and I'll start in order again. I'll start with Carl. I wanted to not only thank everybody, of course, but also I want you to share your hope and desire for the future of tech conferences. What you hope that will happen in the future with tech conferences, whatever that is. So, Carl. Oh, you don't want to go anywhere now, right? You just want to.
No, no, I'm sorry.
Play in Meadowland.
I do love this thing, and I enjoy it. I have yet to see an experience like a real live conference that I can have with that thing.
Yeah.
But there is a great app. This is the Quest 3, by the way, called Immersive, and basically, and this is a total. I'm sorry about this, but this is a great app. So you basically sit in front of your computer and you can see your computer screen. You can move it around and you can create other virtual screens in Windows and be in different environments and open up portals so you can see your keyboard and your hands and your mouth. That's not it. The future, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, because I think all of us here came of age in the golden age of conferences. The very first VBits you and I were at, and we went forward from there and speaking all over the world. It's becoming harder and harder today for conferences to get people to come.
Right.
And so I don't know what the answer is. Maybe the answer is we find some tech for this thing or whatever, where it's actually good and you can go one-on-one with people and sit in small groups and actually feel like you're there. Who knows? I don't have a lot. I'm not very hopeful in the near term. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, that's been part of the reason I wanted to do this, is to talk about, what we want to see in the future in it, because we all see the value. Right?
I just like to see more people come to conferences.
Yeah, me too. And I know things have been tough since COVID started going over, but it's time to go now, right? There's no more restrictions. There's no more mask mandates.
Right.
It's time.
Maybe
to go
that's
and
it,
do
Dave.
Yeah.
It really, obviously everything came to a halt during COVID, and people found alternate ways to get information. And AI and ChatGPT and stuff has been invaluable for me as a coding partner. I'm not going to admit it, Yeah. But there's something to be said for just getting together with people.
Yeah.
And you can't do that right now on the VR thing.
Right. Yeah.
No way. The metaverse is not here.
No. Not for a while.
No.
Christian, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I was thinking. So I had some conversations about this question this past week as well. I mean, look, there's a lot of benefits that came out of. Nobody talks about the positives of the pandemic, but it helped a lot of organizations realize. Hey, we can support virtual. And I've been a remote employee for the last 15 years.
Right.
So it's great that everybody's kind of caught up and said, hey, we can do that. Our event we're doing next month is in person only. We're not trying to do hybrid. I think that there's a time and a place, and there's certain kinds of content. There's things that you can do with broadcast medium by virtualizing it. What we're starting to see is more and more conversations helping with other regional events is thinking about that in-person experience and coming up with new experiences that you can only do in person to make it more compelling.
Yeah.
So to do, like, I was participated in with those that are familiar with aim.org. So years back, where we did in person twice a year at different places in the world, brought in subject matter experts and then executives from companies and sat around and had table topics and then compiled that. So had in-depth conversations. People signed up to sit at a table with subject matter experts to dive into a certain topics. I mean, things like that. So things where, and I think that's where if you're putting together a local regional conference or even the larger conferences, you have to think about what things can we do that can only be done and benefit the people that are here at the event, that are networking based. The social things, of course, that's a huge part of that. But to drive people to interact. I mean, things like, I do the same thing. Like, I go sit at tables with people I don't know. That's something that I learned that trick years ago, 20 plus years ago, and has been invaluable. Like, spread ourselves out. I'm there with a team of 10 people. Let's not sit together.
Right.
Yeah.
Go meet other people and then bring back that information. But I think that's where the future needs to go, is that they need to evolve and change and think about those in-person experiences and expand their thinking of what a conference could be. I always say, like, as RDs, the best conference that at MVP Summit that I went to was where we had a couple days for RDs at the end of that, where we did an unconference model. I got so much more out of that than all of these sessions sitting there being broadcast, product details, sitting and actually talking about real world scenarios and having conversations with people was so incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah.
Right.
Just before we go on, you brought up COVID, and this is probably an old story, and everybody has somebody or knows somebody who has this. My brother's a software developer, and he worked for a company that had rented out this big facility. And during COVID, everything shut down. They all went to work remotely. They ended up moving out of the building. Everybody my brother came to band rehearsal once. He goes, I'm coming to grips with the fact that I'm never going back to the office.
Yeah. Well, Rocky needs to drop soon. So
go ahead,
go next, Rocky?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. The conference world, at least from an organizer, co-chair perspective, I look at it and it builds up, and then 2008 happens, the economic blow, and it builds back up, and then there's COVID, and it builds back up, and then there's Omicron, and year over year, this year is already shaping up to be better than last year in terms of conference attendance, and so I do think the demand is there. I think people understand, a lot of people do anyway, understand the value, desire to go. I think a lot of organizations still understand the value. I hope in this episode, we've laid out and motivated some of the skeptics maybe to understand the value. And we've all talked about this, but the value is pretty tremendous, right?
Yes.
At an individual level, at a career level, and for companies that are forward looking and are open and not defensive. I think that the value for an employer is pretty clear and obvious as well. So yeah, I guess I'm a lot more optimistic about it maybe than some of the other folks here. Even in the face of all of the virtual competition, there's just nothing like those hallway conversations or
Yep.
the conversations at over lunch or at a happy hour or whatever it is. So
Yes.
I just look forward to seeing a lot of folks at conferences and events
too.
going forward.
Yeah, me too.
But I do need to sign off. So
Yeah.
I appreciate all the time, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks, Rocky. Good to see you.
I'm so glad you were here, Rocky, and I really appreciate the value you brought to this episode, and I really appreciate that. And have a good rest of the weekend.
Great.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Purnima, do you want to go last but not least?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. When it comes to the future of conferences, I don't know. I am a bit. I really don't have a clear answer for that. But I would like to see conferences grow, like more and more people coming in for sure, because that's how it should be. Tech is always growing, so why not tech conferences then? But having said that, I have been to a couple of conferences. I've heard from a couple of conferences, conference organizers this year that the numbers have been dropping. It was not as same as last year.
Yeah.
And equally, towards the end of last year, I was a part of a conference where the future was not looking bright. It was not sure whether it would even happen or not. So as much as you can support the conference, absolutely go for it, because believe it or not, putting together a conference is no mean feat. The logistics
It's
that
hard.
goes into it is hard. I usually run the Global Azure Bootcamp with my friend, the London aspect of it. It's a conference, but it is like a bigger meetup on the day. But even then, the logistics that goes into it, it is no mean feat, making sure you have a diverse lineup, a diverse range of topics, helping other speakers answering the questions. And the day is just running around. I do my step count just by being in the venue running around. So it's a lot of work that goes into it. So have that empathy for the conference organizers and support them. They are really, really passionate about what they do. Otherwise, many of the conferences wouldn't be there. There are conferences and there are community-driven conferences where there's unbelievable amount of passion. And if you go into a tech conference, as Christian said, go take a round at the expo hall. Of course, the swag is there, but the conversations, I've had some life-changing conversations, some useful, like top-notch tech tips that have come out of just going to the booths, because people want to know what you are doing and what you do genuinely. That is why you have all the booths at the expo hall. So it's not just sessions at conferences, it's a lot more than that. And meeting and greeting people is a feeling that even sitting for 25 hours in front of a computer, if a day is 24 hours, you make an extra hour out of your day. Sitting at a computer cannot gain you that experience.
Right.
No AI can bring you that experience. Go talk to people.
Yeah.
Can't bring you that experience for at least another 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. And everything you guys have said is totally right on to me. I mean, the way I think, and I personally hope that conferences, not only become more popular, but also more hybrid, so everybody can kind of benefit. And with even talking about hybrid, I hope that there's low cost, hybrid methods that some of these community conferences can do, because, doing hybrid is really expensive too, right? I mean, look at the crew they had in Lithuania, right? In the main room that I spoke in, that crew they had there, they even had a camera that followed you because they put a sensor on your belt, right? And so that is incredibly expensive. And so hopefully that cost will come down as more and more people can use it. So everybody in the world can take advantage of the same content that, the people who go in person get. But in the same thing, the other thing I want to encourage everybody is that, if you've been to a conference, make sure you give feedback to the conference, right? And, if you feel there's not enough networking opportunities, if you feel there's not enough ways to learn besides the sessions, make sure you tell them, right? They want to listen to you because you pay them, right? So hopefully they'll listen to you. I, as a speaker, can complain and whine all I want, but it's really the attendees that are going to make the differences, right? And so don't feel shy on reaching out and talking to the people, and either through email or grabbing somebody, one of the organizers at the conference. Make your feelings known, because I do want conferences to come back bigger and stronger than they used to be. And including community-run conferences, because those have been really hard hit to me during COVID. We don't have hardly anything in Southern California anymore, and so I hope the community-run ones come back also. So
it's great, Dave. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I want to thank everybody, including Rocky, who had to leave soon, but I'm so glad all of you are all my friends, and I'm so glad that you've come on and make some time in your Saturday to help, others, everybody watching the show, to hopefully go to conferences, have a great experience, and then speak at conferences, give back, right? So thank you, everybody, for being on the show. I'm so grateful, and I'm probably not going to hang out after the show, but because Simon probably wants to go to bed. But thank you so much, and I'm really am glad I got to talk to you all about this important subject.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was I really enjoyed this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, even if you're watching later. I'm kind of sad no one asked any questions, but that's okay. I think all the people in my panel gave such great advice, that not only for you yourself on how important in-person conferences are, not only for your job but for your career growth. But hopefully, we've given companies a lot of ideas on why, they need to send their developers back to conferences. We need companies to start really spearheading that. And like I said a little bit ago, that is a good sign of a company. If a company won't send you to conferences, won't send you to continuing education, that's a sign of a company you might not want to join. So keep searching for one who is invested in your career growth and all those kind of good things. So I had a great time on this episode. If you hung out to the end, I'm really, really happy. I just got 2 more slides really quick. I'll go over them quick. One is, of course, as always, please go to voiceofslum.org. Donate anything you can help these kids in Delhi, India. Get out of the slums and get some training and get fed and get clothing and all those things. It's a great, great organization. You can see pictures of the last time I was there. So please give Voice of Slum whatever you can help, whatever you can help them with. And you don't need, you can give them money, or you can buy school supplies and things like that. So if you live in America, I'll send you some swag if you donate. Just let me know that you did it, and I'll do that. All right, so guess what? The 100th episode is April 6th with a returning guest, John Kattenhorn. So he's going to be back on. It will be the 100th episode. I'm so excited. I'm reaching 100. I really didn't think I'd even make it this far when I started this show 3.5 years ago, and I really loved doing this show for you all, and I'm really excited about this next episode on April 6th. So make sure you come back live and ask questions of John. As always, please go donate blood. All the blood banks in America are in dire shortage right now. I'm donating tomorrow. I donate every 4 weeks when I'm not traveling. So if you're not traveling, please go donate today, this weekend. If you live in America, I'll send you some swag if you donate this weekend. This is how important. I've even gotten people in Thailand to start donating blood now. I'm really excited about that. And so please go donate blood because your fellow human needs it, and you might need it someday. All right, with that, I will see you all on April 6th for the 100th episode. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, guests you'd like to be on the show, please email me at dotNetDave@live.com. And with that, I'll see you next time.